Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. I'm a professional baker and I've worked for various companies developing recipes and such. In 2022, I landed a job at a local grocery store working super early mornings on their pastries for the day. There were usually a few other people there, one of whom was a mixer named Jake. Mixers typically follow a spec sheet with the weights of all the ingredients they need to batch mix. It's kinda mindless work and doesn't require much thought. Jake was a young guy, fresh out of his teens. We became fast coworker friends and enjoyed chatting about baking, and I'd help him put our supply order away. Good times. One day, a woman with a thick Russian accent came in and handed us business cards. She told us, "Whatever you're getting paid, our company will double it if you come work for us." I scheduled an interview thinking this would be a great opportunity for me. It was a new grocery store concept, like a glitzy, glammy, European-style Costco, whatever that means. When I went in for the interview, the place was literally still under construction. I met their lead baker, Tom, and we hit it off right away. Tom warned me, "Just so you know, the big boss has interesting tastes, and we'll need to work with that." I shrugged. "No biggie, more money, let's go." They hired us both, and over the next several months, it was a really interesting and fun experience. The big boss, thick, burly Russian man, to the point and perpetually angry, wanted this place to be like Costco, mass production of quality pastries. They were bringing in crazy amounts of new equipment, including folders, shapers, and injectors that were easily worth millions. We didn't have much equipment to start, and we were doing a lot of mixing in trash cans. Remember Jake, my mixer buddy? Well, he was working on the bread dough using spec sheets provided by Tom. Over time, they were bringing on more staff, and it was a lot of fun developing new recipes, experimenting with ratios, and figuring out how to get over constraints for the types of products that boss wanted. Did I mention he was an a-hole? Oh yeah, when he was reviewing some cheesecake I had made, he said, "Good job, sweetie." I came back with "Miss, ma'am," or "My name is fine." He scowled at me, and from that point on, he treated me like garbage. We brought other women on staff. I watched him hit on them. Some of the others were cool with being sexually harassed, I guess. This place was paying top dollar and had to get in good with the big boss, right? So, the stage is set here. Boss quickly turned his business into a game of Survivor. He'd fire people on the spot for whatever reason. One day, one of the people he sacked was Tom, our lead baker. It came as a surprise since he was developing all the recipes we'd be using. I inherited a lot of his notes, and his development work was divided between me and Jake. So this whole time, Jake was kissing Big Boss ass pretty hard. He was seeing an open position with Tom gone, and quickly became invested in the idea of him running the bakery show and making some serious money. At the same time, my relationship with Big Boss was quickly declining. For an example, I had him sample some cinnamon rolls I had made, and he came back with, "I hate these, they're terrible." "What do you not like? We can change anything about them." "The dough, the filling, the icing?" I asked. "I don't know, I just don't like them," he growled. On a hunch, I gave some cinnamon rolls from the same batch to Sarah, another lady there he had eyes for, and asked her if she'd present them to him as her own. She offered him the same product I had given him minutes before, and he loved it. Anyway, I noticed that my notes were out of place one day, and a coworker informed me Jake was stealing my work and presenting it as his own. He was also approaching me and asking a lot of baking questions, which was fine, but I knew that his knowledge of industrial ratio baking was mediocre at best. He was a mixer. Following a recipe is all he knew how to do. Knowing this, I made a decoy copy of my notes, but this time I put really awful recipes, with huge amounts of salt or yeast. Anyone who knew how to build a recipe could probably look at it and go, "Whoa, that's a lot." Not Jake. My original plan was to leave this in an obvious spot as bait and let him steal the awful recipes, but Big Boss had other plans. We sat down for a pre-launch meeting and he informed me I wasn't going to be working in the bakery anymore and being relegated to store setup. Jake was going to be taking over as the lead baker. Guess all that ass-kissing really paid off. And I was to give him all my notes so far. "No problem, boss," I said with a forced smile. A day later was when the fun really began. Jake mixed up a huge batch of super ass salty cake batter, and I heard Big Boss screaming at him about way too much salt. That's not even where the fun begins. As we were setting up an industrial quantity baking equipment, we had to test the larger quantity mixing machines, and did a test run for some bread dough, with my decoy recipe that had triple the yeast and sugar. As it didn't come out right, Jake had to throw it away. His choice? The dumpster out back in the dead heat of summer. Hundreds of pounds of dough. The fun thing about massive amounts of bread dough is that it doesn't magically stop rising if you throw it away, especially in a hot dumpster. A few hours later, I spied out back to see Jake shoveling this massive blob of dough into trash bags that had exploded from the dumpster like an uncovered blender spewing out a yeast-laden smoothie. Sweet revenge. Now, about the mafia thing, this store was really strange. They had been ordering doubles of all the crazy industrial baking equipment and storing them in back. We had nowhere to put any of this. I also looked up the company they were subcontracted under, and it was to a dead address in Russia. Big Boss also had armed security guards everywhere. This was a grocery store, mind you. I had a feeling that this company was more of a front for laundering a bunch of money. I eventually was fired by Big Boss, which was great because I had been job hunting, full well knowing this business was a sinking ship. I had a new job lined up already. They had their grand opening, did business for 3 months, then closed. R.I.P. Jake. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to have issues with my neighbors. I always tried to be friendly and mind my own business. But sometimes, no matter how hard you try to avoid conflict, it finds you anyway. That's exactly what happened with my neighbor Karen and her giant SUV. It all started about 6 months ago when Karen and her family moved in next door. At first, everything seemed fine. We exchanged friendly waves and small talk when we saw each other outside, but it didn't take long for problems to start. One day, I came home from work to find a massive black SUV parked in my driveway. I figured it must be a visitor who got confused about which house they were supposed to be at. No big deal, I thought. I knocked on Karen's door to ask if she knew whose car it was. Karen answered with a big fake smile. "Oh, that's mine. I hope you don't mind. Our driveway was full, so I just parked there for a bit." I was taken aback but tried to be polite. "Well, I do need to park there myself. Do you think you could move it soon?" Of course, Karen said breezily. "I'll move it in just a little while." Hours went by and the SUV was still there. I ended up having to park on the street overnight. The next morning, I knocked on Karen's door again. This time her husband answered. "Hi there," I said. "I hate to be a bother, but that SUV is still in my driveway. I really need to be able to park there." He looked confused. "Oh, Karen said you told her it was fine to park there anytime." My jaw dropped. "What? No, that's not what I said at all. I asked her to move it yesterday." He shrugged. "Well, I'll let her know. Sorry about that." The SUV was finally moved later that day. I hoped that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. Over the next few weeks, I came home multiple times to find Karen's SUV in my driveway. Each time I asked her to move it, she'd act surprised and claim she thought I was okay with it. After about the 5th time this happened, I'd had enough. I left a note on her windshield clearly stating that she did not have permission to park in my driveway and needed to stop immediately. The next day, Karen stormed over while I was getting my mail. "How dare you leave that rude note on my car?" she shrieked. "I can't believe how unwelcoming and unfriendly you're being. What's the big deal if I park there once in a while?" I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "Karen, I've asked you multiple times not to park there. It's my private property and I need access to my own driveway. Please respect that and don't park there anymore." She crossed her arms and glared at me. "Well, I think you're being ridiculous. It's not like you're using it all the time anyway. You should be happy to help out a neighbor." I was stunned by her entitlement. "Whether I'm actively using it or not doesn't matter. It's my property, period. Find somewhere else to park." Karen stomped off in a huff. I hoped that would finally get through to her, but nope. If anything, she started parking in my driveway even more frequently after that. It was like she was doing it out of spite now. I decided it was time to take more serious action. I called the police non-emergency line to report the repeated trespassing. They said they'd send an officer out to speak with Karen. Later that day, I saw a police car pull up. The officer talked to Karen for a while. She was gesturing angrily and I could hear her shrill voice from across the yard. Eventually, the officer left. Karen glared daggers at me before slamming her front door. To my relief, Karen's SUV stayed out of my driveway for almost 2 whole weeks after that. Just when I thought the issue was resolved, I came home one day to find it parked there yet again. That was the last straw. I called a towing company and had them come remove the SUV. As they were hooking it up, Karen came running out of her house screaming, "What do you think you're doing? You can't tow my car!" "Actually, I can," I replied calmly. "You're trespassing on private property after multiple warnings. The car is being impounded." Karen's face turned bright red. You'll be sorry for this. I'm calling the police. Go right ahead, I said. They already warned you about this, remember? She pulled out her phone and started yelling at the cop dispatcher. Meanwhile, the tow truck driver finished securing the SUV and drove off with it. A police officer showed up about 20 minutes later. Karen immediately launched into a tirade, claiming I had stolen her car and demanding I be arrested. The officer listened patiently, then turned to me for my side of the story. I calmly explained the ongoing issue and showed the officer the security camera footage I had of Karen repeatedly parking in my driveway despite warnings. I also had photos of the note I'd left and records of my calls to the police about the trespassing. The officer nodded. Ma'am, it appears your vehicle was legally towed from private property after you ignored multiple warnings. You'll need to pay the impound fees to get it back. Karen's jaw dropped. But that's not fair. He can't just tow my car like that. Actually, he can, the officer replied. You were trespassing. I suggest you don't park there again unless you want your vehicle towed in the future as well. Karen burst into angry tears and stormed back to her house. The officer gave me his card and told me to call if I had any more issues. I thought that would finally be the end of it, but Karen wasn't done yet. Over the next few days, she started a smear campaign against me with the other neighbors. She told everyone I was a horrible, selfish person who had her car stolen for no reason. Some people seemed to buy her story at first, but it didn't take long for Karen's true colors to show. She tried to rally the neighbors to pressure me into letting her use my driveway. When that didn't work, she started making vague threats about how I'd better watch my back. I documented everything and called the police again. This time, they took it more seriously given the pattern of harassment. They gave Karen an official warning that she could be charged if the behavior continued. That finally seemed to get through to her. Karen stopped talking to me altogether, and I haven't seen her SUV anywhere near my property since then. Some of the neighbors have apologized to me for believing Karen's lies at first. Apparently she's been causing drama with other people too. I'm just glad the whole ordeal is over and I can finally use my own driveway in peace again. Looking back, I wish I had taken more decisive action sooner instead of trying to be overly nice about it. But at least justice prevailed in the end. And you can bet I'll be a lot quicker to stand up for myself if anything like this ever happens again. The next one is a petty revenge story. When I was around 12 at the family cottage, entire packages of cookies would go missing. I found out that my greedy sister was hoarding them in her bedroom because she always had a cookie in her mouth. Having food in the bedrooms was always a no-no because of mice, but she stashed them in a drawer and there were never any for the rest of us. So I snuck into her room and tore open the bottom of the bag, took a couple of bathroom tissues, mixed them in with shards of packaging from the bag, crumbled up a couple of cookies and made what looked like a mouse nest. Less than an hour later, she is shrieking in her bedroom. The whole family goes to her room. There's a mouse nest in my dresser drawer. I point at the opposite corner where no one is looking. Mouse! I yell. It just scurried into the closet. I grab a broom to kill the non-existent mouse, but it was too sneaky and got away. My sister is terrified of mice and insists that she can't clean up the mess. Nuh-uh, don't look at me, I'm not cleaning it up, I say. I'll pay you, my sister says. $5 or you can do it yourself, I state, holding back laughter. She agrees. I tell everyone to clear out, have a couple of cookies finishing the bag, remove the drawer and run out the door, emptying it into the forest. Oh God, it had babies, I yell, playing it up as best I can. I put the now empty drawer on the lawn and spray it out as best I can. Mice leave a scent, and once a nest has been established, they will be drawn to that scent and try to nest in the same spot. Or maybe they aren't, but that's what she believed. It also explains why she had 3 more mice nests in that drawer that summer. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Years ago, when flip phones were the hot thing to own, I worked in a factory making paper. There were 6 people on each shift, constantly watching the machine process in case of wrinkles, tears, or sometimes even fire. Paper dust in the air had a habit of falling on fast-moving parts of the machines, and presto, almost instant fire. We usually had several small fires every year, but nothing we couldn't handle. We had all worked there for 10 years or more, so the trust was high. We did our work, and our floor manager, John, never had to direct us to do anything, until one really special day. Something to know about the factory. It was big, really big. To the north of it, there was a workshop with mechanics ready to help us and the other companies in the same building. To the east was the loading bay and ramps for trucks. To the south was another company that laminated and printed paper. To the west was an area rented out for short periods. Sometimes it was a mess hall for showing products, other times a shop and warehouse for sporting equipment. Everything was under the same roof. This is where the problem began. After one of the worst fires we had, I was on vacation while my coworkers tried to keep the fire as small as possible until the firemen arrived. 3 people ended up with smoke inhalation damage. 2 of them were okay after a few days, but Paul, on the other hand, suffered lifelong damage. He could still work, but when a company repaired our floor and used epoxy to seal the cracks, Paul suddenly couldn't breathe. Our team leader drove him to the hospital, and after inhaling Bricanyl, he could breathe again. We now knew how badly damaged his lungs were, and any strong chemical could kill him. I had years of experience working with strong chemicals, so it never bothered me, something that would come into play later. Months after this, we changed our work schedule, and our shift only worked weekends. It was a sweet deal with extra pay. The only hassle was the burners that dried the paper. They could sometimes be a pain to fire up, as the safe, environmentally friendly LPG had problems starting in cold weather. No problem. While we waited for those to work, we could start the rest of the machines that ran on electricity. Do you remember the warehouse west of us that was sometimes rented out? Well, for some unknown reason, pressure perhaps, their ventilation pipe was directly over the panels we used to control our machines. Sometimes we could smell leather from jackets being sold next to us. One summer they sold strawberries there, and after work we all went there and filled our cars because those strawberries were dirt cheap. One Saturday someone had the bright idea to rent the place for the weekend and spray paint their big lawn mower. We felt the fumes right away. You guessed it, big rush to the hospital with Paul again, and I had a nice talk with the guy. At this time, we were part of the European Union, and since I had worked with chemicals, I knew the papers you had to sign, the people you had to talk to, and the documentation you had to bring with the chemicals just to take them inside a factory. He had none of that. We talked to the company that owned the factory, and they promised to never let this happen again. That promise lasted 4 months. When I arrived one morning, I noticed that the factory chimney had no smoke. Odd, I thought, as some of the earlier guys usually fired up the burners right away since they could be tricky. After changing clothes and getting ready to open the door to the workplace, I felt it. Nauseatingly strong chemical fumes enough to melt wallpaper. I took a big breath, held it, and rushed to the coffee room. It was soundproof and had rubber insulation at the door, but inside I could still feel the fumes. Half of the guys were there drinking coffee. The rest had taken Paul to the hospital again. It was really bad this time. Everything was shut down as nobody could work with fumes like that. They had opened up every door and window they could, but it would take hours before any work could be done. They had talked to a new guy renting the west area, and he had apparently spent the whole night spray painting a combine harvester, and all the fumes had gone directly to us. Now we come to the malicious compliance part, finally. While we were sitting there drinking coffee, chatting, and waiting for the fumes to go away, in comes the floor manager. I have never seen John that angry, and while he never said so, I assume he got a call from the CEO, who ripped him a new one because the numbers on the computer showed we were all working but produced 0 paper for an hour. John must have felt the fumes, but still chewed us all out, even after we explained about Paul. He was adamant that it wasn't that bad, and every minute the machines didn't run was costing the company money. So I stood up and said to the others, "You two, stay, and I'll go with John to start up the burners." He followed me out while I casually chatted with him, trying to look as unbothered by the fumes as I could. We had several panels to start, so I slowly walked to the first one. I felt the fumes, but I could handle strong chemical fumes as I had done it before. It seemed like the burners were on my side that day, as they absolutely refused to start. Even when they struggle, they usually get the hint about what I want them to do in 10 or 15 minutes, but this day they were extra obstinate. When we got to panel number 2, John looked a little green in the face, but as he wanted us to work in the fumes, I let us do that. The same problem with the burner happened again, and I looked at my watch. We had been in the fumes for over 30 minutes now. Even I started to feel dizzy and nauseous by now, but I didn't let it show on my face. I looked happy as normal while working on starting the machines. When we came to the third and last machine, John gave up. He was white in the face and said in a low voice, "Perhaps we could wait a while until the fumes clear up." "Whatever you say," I said with a grin. John never yelled at us again, and I have a warm feeling when I think about that day. Fallout. On Monday, the mud really hit the fan, and safety in the place suddenly became priority number 1. We had many visits from state departments, sometimes in suits and other times in white lab coats, measuring this and that. Several machines had to be rebuilt with extra security features. Work accidents went from 5 a year to just 1, or numbers like that, I'm guessing here. It had a massive effect, and it probably cost a pretty penny to fix. Paul, however, never fully recovered, but he retired early and got a hefty compensation. Not only the pay he would have received for the years he should have been working until retirement, but also damages, both from the company and from a special fund the union had for moments like this. Not that it can compensate for lifelong asthma and the inability to run for more than a minute. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.